Okay, guys, welcome to Daniel 2. I was hoping to have my laptop set up here in the bedroom so I could record privately. And as is the case most of the time, if I store something somewhere in the house, somebody will inadvertently come and pick it up. And if it's more than one thing that's supposed to go together, they will end up getting separated. So I can't find my charger. I don't know how it happens. I don't know why it happens. It doesn't make any sense to me. It seems like that anytime anybody in the house seems to pick something up, they always never put it back where they got it from, but it gets dropped right where they're at, where the most convenient place is. I don't know. I try to make sure that I follow through, and if I get something, put it right back where I got it from. You know, it's when you're fighting a whole household of people that do that stuff. It's hard to be the one keeping up with everything, because eventually you just get tired of keeping up with it. So if you're a mother or a father and have kids and have to clean house on a regular basis, you understand what I'm talking about. And sometimes it's just, you set it down and it's like within a minute it's gone. And it's like, it was just there. My wife learned this hard lesson with her truck keys that are very expensive to replace, and kept forgetting them. And one time to the point that she was like worried, because she was like, I don't know where these are. And so the last time she had lost them, they were in her pants pocket. And I said, okay, so did you check your pants pockets? And she got mad at me after multiple times me asking. And she said, yes, I checked my pants pockets. After about an hour and a half, she goes back and she's digging through, and I'm looking. I could see down into our bedroom, and I'm watching. She's going through clothes again, and I hear them. Oh no, wait! I take that back. That was the first time. The second time, she's mad at me, and she's picking them up. She goes, "Look, see, I checked," and she's shaking a couple of pairs of jeans, and you hear ching, 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 and I was like, and she stops and looks at them. That's your keys. I told her, I said, and I put a spot, I made a little spot over here on this little island we have. I said, right there is where your keys go every time, and you'll always be able to find them. Do you think they go there every time? No, they don't. And then she has to wander around the house looking for them. It's a losing battle. You're never going to win it. I've resigned myself to the fact that it's all junk anyway. If I lose it, I lose it. Whatever. But we'll figure this out. And if I have to, this is another lesson I've been teaching everybody in my house. If you pick something up and you put it where it's not supposed to go and it gets lost, now we have to spend money to go buy another one. And my wife gets mad. Okay, I'm just going to go buy another one then. No, you don't need to buy that kind of stuff. Okay, well, stop losing my stuff. Put it where it's supposed to be. Put it back where you get it from, and they won't have that problem. And they wonder why I just kind of gave up on it, because I used to be meticulous about organizing everything, and they wonder why I gave up on it. I was constantly having to. I even drove. I'm sorry to get off on a tangent here, but any mechanic out there will know exactly what I'm talking about. You always lose your 10 millimeter wrench and your 10 millimeter socket. I'm in the middle of a mechanic job years ago. My dad comes up, borrows my 10 millimeter socket. Hey, I just need it for a minute. I'll bring it back. Well, they all had get no conversation. He did whatever he's going to do, chucked it in his car, and took off. I got into my wife's vehicle and drove all the way into town to Walmart, waited for him till he got out. And I said, you still have my 10 millimeter and I need it. I'm in the middle of a mechanic job. I just had to spend an hour and a half waiting on you. Dug it out of his trunk. He put it in his trunk of all places, dug it out of his trunk so I could go back and do my mechanic job. And they wonder why I get mad. You guys don't even try to organize your stuff. And this is why we lose stuff. So it is what it is. It's part of life. If you're by yourself, you don't have these problems. Everything gets organized and only you are responsible. So we're going to be doing this on the cell phone because no charger. And it's okay, because these first couple of chapters, we really don't need to dig too awful deep into stuff. But my hope is that we'll be able to, because I want to be able to dig into these things a little deeper. So Daniel 2, Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Now, we already know the situation in Daniel 1 from a week ago, where Daniel was like, him, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were like, okay, you guys can, and all these other guys, you guys can have I'm going to give you a portion of my food that I have as the king and my drink and all that. And Daniel's like, no, we can't partake in that. And they're like, well, but wait a minute. Because the guard over them was like Daniel. And so he was like, well, just give us vegetables and watch. You'll see us do better than these other guys. And they did. So it was proving God. But now Nebuchadnezzar is going to have a dream. So God is also working this situation out to put Daniel in a better position with the king. After, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego got chucked in the oven, and then Nebuchadnezzar looked in there and was like, I see Christ. I see Jesus. What? Hello? And so that's actually kind of shocking to read that. Most of us are used to hearing it. We read past it, but it's not like, stop and think about that. When you hear people talk about, well, Jesus doesn't show up anywhere in the Old Testament. In Daniel 1, he does. I mean, who else would that have been? Now, in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. Then the king gave the command to call the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans, which would be Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to tell the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. And the king said to them, I have had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made an ash heap. Okay, my mistake. These Chaldeans weren't Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel. So this is pretty rough. He's like, okay, I want to know you guys are doing your job. Tell me what the dream was and then give me the interpretation. I'm sure all of them are like, oh, we don't know what you dreamed. We weren't there in your head. So this is a great opportunity for the Lord to show himself and reveal himself. However, verse 6, if you tell the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts, rewards, and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation. That's a pretty tall order. They answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will give its interpretation. So they're trying to cover themselves. The king answered and said, I know for certain that you would gain time, because you see that my decision is firm. They're stalling. If you do not make known the dream to me, there is only one decree for you. For you have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time has changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can give me its interpretation. So he already knew what they were about, and that they were lying to him, and they were pulling the wool over his eyes. Basically, a rope-a-dope. Oh, we got this king. We're going to live high on the hog, and we'll just tell him what he wants to hear. But he's like, no. Verse 10, the Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. It is a difficult thing that the king requests, and there is no other who can tell it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. For this reason the king was angry and very furious, and gave the command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. That's rough. So the decree went out, and they began killing the wise men, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Now God reveals Nebuchadnezzar's dream. So they're going to, okay, we're going to kill these guys too. They're going to get everybody. And I'm sure these guys didn't know what was going on. Verse 14, then with counsel and wisdom, Daniel answered Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree from the king so urgent? Then Arioch made the decision known to Daniel. So Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time, that he might tell the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they might seek mercies from the God of heaven concerning the secret, so that Daniel and his companions might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. And that was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego there. Then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever. For wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you. For you have made known to us the king's demand. Daniel explains the dream. Therefore Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me before the king, and I will tell the king the interpretation. Then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king, and said thus to him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah, who will make known to the king the interpretation. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Are you able to make known to me the dream which I had seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, The secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. So now we're getting into future prophecies. So this basically, these chapters are the setup to all the prophecies in later parts of Daniel. Those are the ones I got to have my laptop for, because there's a lot in them. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. As for you, O king, thoughts came to your mind while on your bed, about what would come to pass after this, and he who reveals secrets has made known to you what will be. But as for me, this secret has not been revealed to me, because I have more wisdom than anyone living. But for our sakes who make known to the interpretation of the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your heart. You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. And that's interesting because that is our time frame right now. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image and its feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together and became like chaff before the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. So, the interesting thing is the interpretation of this dream, because we listen to this and we're like, okay, what's going on here? This is why you never take scripture out of context, but instead read the context. Read in there what this is. And what's funny is that this same thing applies to a big debate going on today about who Mystery Babylon is. And a lot of people have all these theories about this kind of stuff. But if you read a little further down in the chapter, it actually tells you what Mystery Babylon is. It tells you what the dragon with the red dragon with the 7 heads and 10 horns is. Exactly what it is. And so when you read that, you're like, okay, well, none of y'all are right, because none of those interpretations match. They keep thinking it's America. It doesn't match. They keep thinking it's Rome. It doesn't match. But it sits on 7 mountains. Go read what the chapter, the second part of the chapter in Revelation tells you that beast with 7 heads and 10 horns is. It's not 7 mountains. It's 7 leaders. 7 groups of 10 with leaders. And then councils on top of that. So simple. But see, this is why you have to read. Now, here's where the important part is on this particular dream he's having, is the interpretation of what this is. Verse 36, this is the dream. Now we will tell the interpretation of it before the king. You, O king, are a king of kings. For the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of the heaven, he has given them into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. But after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. Now that particular kingdom of bronze, I believe, was the Ottoman Empire. Verse 40. But I could be wrong, but I think that's where that one applies to. And for the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron. Not 100% sure what that one is. It could be Britain. I don't know. Inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything, and like iron that crushes, the kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. It also could possibly be, the iron could possibly be the Ottoman Empire, and then the bronze was the Roman, specifically Roman Empire. A lot of details in here. Like I said, I don't have my laptop. It's hard to look that stuff up. But we'll get into it. Whereas you saw the feet and toes partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. Notice the potter's clay. Why is it potter's clay? Because potter's clay is different than regular clay. But he's making it specific. It's potter's clay. That's the clay you use to make pottery. Regular clay, you can't use it for that. There are too many impurities. Go out and find a clay pit and dig some up, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's got too much iron in it. You've got to work this stuff out. And if you see a potter make potter's clay, they really mix this until it's a smooth butter in order to make something out of it. Otherwise, it won't cast. And partly of iron. So it's going to be part of that iron kingdom, but then this potter's clay, this weaker stuff, is going to be in there. The kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. So he's making it known this is a certain type of clay. This is something a point a lot of people skip over. It's a certain type of clay. Not all clay is the same. This is a special type for a certain purpose. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. So he's kind of speaking a little bit in code here. But these are going to be kingdoms and leaders. And in the days of these kings, so it's a future time, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So what kingdom is that? The kingdom of Christ in the millennial reign. God's kingdom. So this particular time frame is where the tribulation is going to happen. And it's our time right now. If you go back and look at the different ages, Nebuchadnezzar was the head. He's giving you a clue on how to calculate it. Nebuchadnezzar was the head, the gold head. So you go and you start to do a countdown. You can do research on this. See when his reign ended and the next one started, and then it ended. Next one started, it ended. And just keep moving your way through. You start to get the math down really easily, and you realize we're the toes of iron and clay. Verse 45, inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is sure. Now, what is that stone made without hands? Well, you can relate that to Jesus if you want. He's the chief cornerstone, but he was made without hands. You can also attribute that to the Ten Commandments because it was made without hands too. So it would be the law of God, or it would be the statutes of God. I mean, there's a couple different ways you can float with this. But the main thing would be Jesus. Jesus is the one who's going to bring all this stuff down and is bringing it down. But there may be a better interpretation out there on that. But this, when I'm reading this, that's what it tells me. That stone made without hands is what God is doing. So Daniel and his friends get promoted here. Verse 46. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face, prostrate before Daniel, and commanded that they should present an offering and incense to him. So, of course, Daniel doesn't want to be worshipped. But this is his response. Because he was like, nobody else could tell me this, but this guy, he literally described it to a T. And so it blew his mind. Verse 47, the king answered Daniel and said, truly your God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and the revealer of secrets, since you could reveal this secret. This is interesting that Nebuchadnezzar is confessing God. He's confessing faith. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Kind of makes you wonder if we're going to see Nebuchadnezzar in heaven. All you got to do is read the book. Verse 48, then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. So when you do it God's way, even if you're in enemy territory, he will put you in control over that stuff. What did he do with Joshua? Remember Joshua? He was Pharaoh's right. He was right hand to Pharaoh. Nobody else was above him but Pharaoh. 49. Also, Daniel petitioned the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. These guys are held very high position because they were faithful to God. They did what they knew they were supposed to do. They walked with integrity, walked with holiness, and so the Lord blessed them. So even though they're in their enemy territory, even though they're in exile and they're being imprisoned, they're in high authority. This is something that God does. He does this with us. And how funny that he put them right in the situation that they needed to be in order to share the truth with others. How cool. Paul said he wanted to go to Rome. What did the Lord do? Sent him to Rome. Sent him to Rome, had them rent him a house. He had a job, and he preached the gospel. Amazing. He does that with all of us. He's just like we talked yesterday. He saves us where we are, and he uses us to great effect in that area, in that situation. And he's doing this right here. He's got them, they're in trouble. They're in, a negative situation. But just like the Bible says, all things work for the good of those that love God. He turned it around and made it into an incredible situation. These guys are rich. These guys are rich, and they are second only to Pharaoh, or only to Nebuchadnezzar. That's amazing. But we see this as evidence throughout biblical history of God using his great men to do these very same things and putting them in very high positions. So this is why we have to watch our pride, and we have to check ourselves and examine ourselves and make sure we're standing where we're going, because the Lord can use us to great effect if we're walking in faith. So this is why a life lived for God is thing. Now, right now, there's not really, there's other people that are in high positions. There's other people that are up there, that are Christian, that are doing what the Lord is using them for. And there's some of us down here on a little mid-level and some on the lower level that are doing it, but not everybody's going to be in that position. But God's going to use those that he deems perfect for this particular purpose. And so in government, we have them, and in other areas. And again, it goes back to what I said a couple days ago, that I think us being separated the way we are around the world is on purpose. I think it's by design. Because when he takes us, it's going to have a great effect on the world around. Because people are going to become very aware. Because all of a sudden they're going to go, wait a minute, what? All the news is going to talk about all these people missing. Wait a minute, they were all Christians. They were all talking about the rapture. They were all, what? So it's going to really grab people's attention when all of a sudden all the true believers leave. The people that are the bride leave. And it's going to wake the world up. The Lord does this on purpose. Because look at the work that he's doing here in Daniel. Same thing. Puts them in high places, right where they can have the greatest level of effect and the greatest level of influence. And God does some of his most mighty works in these incredible situations. So here's Daniel 2. The setup for these future prophecies. Poor Daniel, like Jeremiah, like all the prophets, he was just run through the ringer on this stuff, and it just ate him up. But he was loyal and faithful, and the Lord used him to a great degree. And we have some of the most important prophecies in the Bible that were given to Daniel. Jump ahead a bunch of years, and John falls into that very same place and ends up getting one of the biggest prophetic books given to him. The attitude and the mentality were much the same between Daniel and John. And the most important prophecies were given to these two guys. Incredible. Funny too, Daniel and Revelation have a lot of connections between each other. So when I finally get my charger found and get my laptop going, I will be able to show you guys some of those, because as we get into the later chapters, we're going to start jumping back and forth between the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. I'm going to show you some very interesting connections that I found, and it's going to help us prove a lot of what's being said here and how there's a lot of stuff that's being put out there that isn't necessarily correct because it's the people are interpreting it as standalone instead of realizing there's other parts in the Bible that talk about it and prove it, so we can go and we can prove it. So my hope is to be able to do that. So just another reason why I'm doing one video a week on Daniel, because there's a lot here. So that was Daniel 2, guys. I mean, these first couple of videos are going to be pretty laid back because it's the setup. I'm hoping next Wednesday I'll have my laptop going. So the next video will be Daniel 3, the image of gold, and we're going to get into the whole scenario behind them bowing down to it. His pride got the better of him. I'm the head of gold, cool, everybody's going to start worshiping me, and he starts losing his mind. And it's going to be, I mean, this is going to be a roller coaster ride, just like Isaiah was. Isaiah, big book. Still didn't cover everything in it. And I'm still not going to cover everything in this one, but we'll do the best we can. Guys, thank you for watching. See you in the next one.